Rude, inconsiderate neighbors. Appreciate any help or thoughts. Posted by Limp Initial 6478. I, a 27 female, and my boyfriend, 27 male, recently bought our first home in a townhome community. It's a nice starter home with 2 bedrooms, 2 full baths, and a decently sized backyard for our 2 dogs. We live on the bottom floor of our 2-story building, and since we moved in, our living situation has been quite unpleasant. Don't get me wrong, we love having a place to call our own, but our neighbors that live in the unit directly above us are the most inconsiderate, unhygienic, miserable people that I've ever come across. I didn't even know that there are people who exist with such little self-awareness and regard for others. Here are most of the instances that have happened that made me despise them. First off, they are heavy smokers of both legal and illegal substances. Now, I don't care if people smoke, to each their own, but most days it smells like they're hotboxing their house. The smoke seeps through our bathroom vents and through our windows, fills our house to the point that I feel like I'm secondhand smoking. I'm pretty sure they are not supposed to be smoking in their house per the community's house rules, plus there are designated smoking areas. On top of the smell, we constantly find cigarette butts, ashes, and lighters in our backyard and in front of our front door. They have a small balcony that sits right above our back porch and a foyer that extends above our entrance. They also disgustingly cough a lot, like all hours of the day, and spit off of their overhang onto what is our property. Secondly, on top of being heavy smokers, they're also heavy drinkers. On at least 2 occasions, the man has dropped a beer bottle off of his foyer and it cracked right in front of our door. We have a Ring camera and caught him picking up a few larger pieces of glass, but leaving the rest. We ended up cleaning it because I was worried that my dogs would step on the glass or that we could be the ones to get fined by the HOA if they saw broken glass in front of our entrance. They also have a dog. I don't blame the dog for anything. He seems like a nice dog. But he is a pit bull terrier mix, and I have not once seen them take him for a proper walk. I always hear him running wild upstairs, probably from all the pent-up energy of being stuck inside all day. We have found large chunks of bones in our backyard from their dog, most likely pushing it over the balcony, and once found a chicken bone with ants all over it in our backyard, which my dogs easily could have eaten or led to an infestation in our house. I've also seen them let their dog out to use the bathroom, mind you, off-leash, which is also against the house rules, and there have been at least a couple of instances where the dog pees right on my car, since we all share a common parking area. Again, I don't blame the dog, but I witnessed the owner just standing there watching his dog pee for a good 10 seconds on my back bumper while not saying anything. While this doesn't necessarily hurt or put anyone at risk, it's still terribly annoying. The reason we haven't gone out of our way to talk to them about how their behavior and way of living is affecting us mostly is because we are very non-confrontational people, but also we have heard our other neighbors who live directly next to them confront them, which led to yelling matches and cops being called on multiple occasions. Even after the back and forth and the cops showing up, their behavior doesn't change, and if they don't get even the slightest sense of self-awareness from their next-door neighbors bringing it up, I doubt a couple of 20-something-year-olds asking them to contain their waste will make any sort of difference. We're also afraid that if we speak up and let it be known that we have a problem with them, they might do something to retaliate. We have cameras that capture our front and back entrances, but because they're directly above us, we wouldn't be able to catch them in the act of actually dropping stuff on our property. We've taken pictures of their waste on our property and sent it to our HOA to make sure we have a record of it, but we have not once received a response from them with any sort of direction to remedy the situation. That's why I'm writing here to see if anyone might have any sort of idea of what we can do to get this to stop, since we're probably going to be living here for at least another 6 to 8 years. The top comment basically says if they've already taken pictures, send them to the HOA, talk to the manager, and really there's nothing else they can do. And he says, and look, I know it's not easy doing anything out of fear of retaliation, and because you have to live so close to them, but if the other neighbors have taken issue, then they're not alone. Talk to the manager directly, show them the pictures, absolutely call the cops, and keep calling them until they actually do something about it. Not your trash can, posted by Extra Entertainer 986. I promise more stories, so here's another one, also during the county fair. This one's just weird. It was a pretty mild summer, so the turnout was higher. Go figure, people didn't want to be boiled to death while trying to eat a piping hot funnel cake in the middle of the day. Who knew? I'm going about my day doing normal Saturday chores, lawn and grocery shopping. I get back to and from the store, and by some miracle, no one is blocking my mailbox. Good. My mailman is incredibly lazy and won't approach if a car is too close. Also stories for a different sub, and no one's in my drive yet. With things put away in the house, I go outside. My trash cans, recycling, green waste, and general garbage are out on the road because for some reason it makes sense for the busiest street to have pickup on days that events are consistently happening on it. I'm surprised to find the trash has all been picked up before noon, so I should be able to get them all pulled back to my house before there's a lot of people trying to use them. The fairground literally has over 100 trash cans set up, or someone tries to move them to park, which according to city code they aren't allowed to do, but again, the cops in this town, they don't care at all. I was wrong. I'm walking out my door as a car pulls up in front of my bins. A dad, 2 boys, and a grandpa get out. I'm not even 5 feet away, and this old guy had to have seen me. He walks to the back of their SUV, opens my green waste bin, and tries to throw a mostly full Gatorade bottle in. I yelled, "Excuse me, please don't throw your garbage in my bins." The old man turns to me, puts his hand to his ear, and goes, "What?" like he's hard of hearing. I'm not deterred by this because, unless he's colorblind and mostly visually impaired with dementia, he knows better. I repeat myself, "Please don't put your garbage in there." The dad of the boys calls out, "Come on, Dad, let's go." Magically, the old man's hearing is perfect. His son was further away, still by the front of the SUV, and the old fart says, "It's not that big of a deal," and he walks away, bottle in hand. "Sir, why did you need to throw away a mostly full bottle? Why couldn't you have just carried it another 30 feet to the public bin across the street? And why did you go for the green waste bin when the garbage can is next to it?" Great way to start my afternoon. Later that afternoon was my first entitled Parker. I go to look out my front window, trying to decide if it's worth it or not to go over and get a cupcake from one of the stands that I really like. Lo and behold, there's a weird car in my drive. I ask my neighbors, not theirs. They thought we got a new one. They tell me to call the police because that's what a cop told them to do. We could get in trouble for any damage to the vehicle, and a towing company could charge us since it's our property. Being 22 at the time, I accepted this truth because adulthood comes with a lot of rules, so okay. I go back to my house to call the cops. As I'm going in my door, I hear the car start and turn to see a gaggle of women getting in. I'm already annoyed, so I yell, "Hey, this is private property." The driver pops back out of her car and says, "We weren't even here that long." Because that somehow matters? I decided that I'm not going low, so I just go back inside and tell my husband that night that I'm slashing tires from now on. He looks me dead in the eye and asked, "You want them to leave, so why would you make it so that they can't leave?" Realizing what I just said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do then, okay? It really should not be that hard to respect other people's property. To anyone thinking, well, I'd rather not litter, so that's why I use random strangers' trash cans. Do you realize that you can just hold on to your crap and not litter in general? Or, if you're that desperate to throw something away, you can knock on someone's door. I've had people, just on a normal day, walk all the way down my driveway and into my lawn to get to my trash can to throw something away. That's just obnoxious. I know it's tempting, but they could have just held on to it. What would have you done? I screwed up by not paying my HOA dues. Very recently started working again. We owed about $2,000 in condo fees and HOA dues. The HOA had served us for court. The court date was last month, and I started working a new job the week before, so I didn't go to court, figuring the judge would default judge for the plaintiff, HOA, and my new wages would get garnished, as has happened to me with creditors in the past. Instead, the HOA lawyer requested a continuance and that the judge issue capias warrant. I didn't know any of this. Worked all day yesterday, and I was exhausted when I got home. I went to bed at 9:30 p.m. But 10 minutes later, someone was pounding on the door like they were the cops or something. They were the cops. They scared my wife and kids and my dogs pretty bad. They wouldn't and couldn't tell me why they were arresting me, but took me out of my house in handcuffs and to jail. When I got to jail, after a bit in the holding cell, one of the arresting officers, and a 55-year-oldish officer, took me to a little room. I asked why I was there, and they couldn't believe that I would have no idea. I said that the only legal trouble, besides a paid-for speeding ticket last year, was my HOA was trying to get a judgment on me for unpaid HOA dues. They said that that couldn't be it. A few minutes later, the magistrate's office sends over a fax saying that the warrant was issued on behalf of my HOA lawyer's request. The cops were surprised, as they had never arrested anyone for civil cases involving overdue bills. I talked to the magistrate over a Skype type of interface and was given a court date for the charge of failure to appear and another court date for the unpaid HOA dues. I was then released 25 miles from home. Bad night. An update, so I may have been wrong, but the cops came again to arrest me again about 20 minutes ago. I was able to convince them that they had already arrested me last week. Thank God the paperwork was at arm's length. What do you think about this story? Should OP be in trouble or is the HOA being dirty? Let me know what you think. This one's an interesting one. Karen wants my tires. It's almost snow season here, and I booked an appointment to have my tires swapped today a month ago. First snow is forecast Wednesday morning, so I knew it would be busy when I got there. It was actually chaos. I checked my vehicle in after about 15 minutes in line, and I was thinking that they were moving pretty quickly for it to be that short, given that they had so many vehicles. There were even some parked on the grass. I had to park a quarter mile down and walk up. And for the next hour, I waited and got to hear the poor employees get screamed at over and over by walk-in customers with no appointments who thought that they should get their tires immediately. But the last one really takes the cake. She'd been staring through the big windows at the shop the whole time she was in line. She was told she had two choices: make an appointment for next Monday and come back, or leave her vehicle and they'd get it done in the order that it came in after those with appointments, so she'd probably need to come back in 8 hours. She started freaking out, screaming and cussing that she needed her tires now and didn't care who was in front of her because she was the first one in line right now. The employee patiently and kindly explained her options again and that they were booked solid for a week. She never even looked at him. She cut him off, yelling at him to give her the tires in the back of that black little SUV that just rolled out. I checked over my shoulder, and sure enough, they just finished up my Land Rover. The employee kept trying to tell her that my tires are mine and that they have plenty of tires. They only have 4 work bays. Well, that SUV is off the lift, so just put mine on it and give me the tires that you put in the back of it. It's really simple. Are you an idiot? He blinked, started to say something, and I cut in. Hey, that's my vehicle. Those are my tires. I own them. Are you suggesting that he steal my all-terrain tires that suck in snow and have them put on your car that they won't even fit? She said, tires are tires. Well then drive off with the ones you have on and leave everyone here the heck alone. Her now whining like a toddler, but they're not snow tires. I need snow tires. I just lost it laughing. Neither are my off-road tires that they'd taken off my rims to put my snow tires on. So I say, seriously, just make an appointment like the rest of us did, and you'll have tires that fit. No, stop yelling at people and go book it online. So I stood up. I don't think I'm exactly intimidating as a 5'6", 49-year-old woman, but it worked. She left and several others in line followed her out. I felt bad about that, honestly. So I say to the employee, sorry you lost business there, but my vehicle is done? He was laughing but trying to hide it. Apparently, everyone that left had been in earlier yelling at them too, so he didn't mind. I still don't understand what her thought process was in the whole thing. Someone said, as I was leaving, that she'd also left her car parked in the middle of the right-hand traffic lane on the busy highway in front of the place. But a shout out to that employee for never losing his cool at all. I can only imagine what his day was like already by the time that she started in, based on just the time I was there. Friendly reminder, if you live somewhere it snows, book your tire appointment in advance. I would like to see to try to put those tires on Karen's car. It's not going to work. That is basic knowledge, is it not? And I'm not even a mechanic. Am I the a-hole for telling my daughter that if she won't stand up for herself, I don't want to hear about it? Hosted by ThrowRA Won't Hear It. I divorced my wife almost 20 years ago because her work life became so severely toxic to my mental health that I was developing extreme anger management issues. To keep it short, it didn't matter who it was, she would not stand up for herself at work. So, day after day, she's telling me these work stories about how upset she was. I'd give her suggestions and nothing would change. Things escalated, and slowly but surely, I was building a resentment that I didn't know was there, and I found myself angry anytime she would talk about work. She refused to get therapy or do anything to improve her situation, and our marriage slowly fell apart because of it. It wasn't until I decided to get therapy myself because I couldn't control my anger that I realized the relationship itself had become toxic for me. It took a lot longer after that, but we ultimately divorced as a result. Fast forward to present day, and my adult daughter is now working in the federal government, and she's letting the same thing happen to her. We talk on the phone every other day, we live in different cities, and the past 3 phone calls she's complained about the same situation. I've given her suggestions and nothing's changed. I immediately recognized my anger building, so I just stopped her last night and I told her that if she won't stand up for herself, I don't want to hear about it. She called me an a-hole and hung up on me. This morning, my son called to ask why my sister is telling everyone I'm an a-hole to hear my side, so I told him the abridged version, and he told me I'm the a-hole as well. I know I might have been just a little tactless in how I shut down the conversation, but I just can't invite that anger into my life again. Maybe it makes me weak, but I'm just not able to cope with it. So for the instances of standing up for my wife, she'd be in a team of 5, but because she was very efficient, her team lead, her super, or manager would keep putting more work on her. Even when she had more work than she could do, she would never say no. At one time, she was on 7 projects, and everyone else in her team was on 1. She just wouldn't say, "I can't, I'm swamped." I would literally suggest that she say something like, "I'm already on 7 projects, I won't have time to take on an extra. I know X is only on 1 project right now, have you asked them?" She would complain and stress out and have breakdowns before the week started because of work anxiety, but still wouldn't say no. After years of seeing this happen to my wife, but her never doing anything to change it or to try and improve herself so she'd have the confidence, the anger I was feeling at her workplace was carrying over to her. I couldn't stomach hearing about her work anymore without immediately becoming angry, but I kept bottling it until I couldn't anymore. Now my daughter is letting the same thing happen to her, so just hearing about it is immediately putting me in that place again, and the anger that I used to feel is coming up with my daughter. Before we reveal if you're the a-hole or not, we have to read the update. Here's part 2. I wanted to lead by clearing up a few things before getting to the update. My wife and I were married for 7 years before my anger issues manifested, and I was her emotional support for even longer. She introduced me to solutions and support, and we had our own rules. On our daily walks, I just listened. If she spoke about work at home, it meant we could discuss it. I did tell her that she needs to get help, but that was at the end of our relationship. She refused couples therapy, personal therapy, and insisted it was my responsibility to be there for her. Much earlier, I'd also asked her if she considered therapy or any other strategies to help manage her anxiety, but I wouldn't press the issue. I admit this manipulation, but my hopes were to open her mind to the idea that she can get help if she wants it. Her own anxiety is why she never did. Ultimately, I had to walk away from the marriage. My daughter is nearing 30 years old. She is not a child, and I'm happy to say we have a great relationship. Her regular calls should be proof enough of that. For those wondering why my anger is so hard to control, prior, I never really got angry. I was raised with the belief that if something happens, it's happened. You have no control over it, so don't let it bother you. I just didn't have much of any experience with anger because of this. When I started to feel it, I just bottled everything. I ignorantly believed that I had control. So for the update, I had a Zoom call with my children. I started by apologizing to my daughter. I'd never spoken to either of them about why their mother and I divorced, so I explained to them why our relationship fell apart while trying to keep their mother's involvement as minimal as I could. I confessed my mental health struggles with anger. I made it clear that it wasn't her fault. I found out that their mother told them a similar version, but put the impetus on herself. So now they have the whole picture. The conversation went well. I answered their questions as best as I could, and I reassured my daughter that she can always speak to me and that she can vent to me. She asked if it would help if she let me know ahead of time that she wants to vent about work, and it was embarrassing, but I asked if she could. We've agreed that she'll text me, "Bad work day," and if I'm able to, I'll call her. My son didn't have much to say, but he did tell his sister that she can call him to vent too. All in all, things are pretty okay. I did schedule an appointment with my therapist. At this point, I've only been seeing her once a month, but this incident merited a call. Also, my daughter has decided to see a therapist for her anxiety, but she insists that she doesn't want to leave the federal government. She says the job security outweighs the risk with the future economy being so uncertain, and I'm proud of her. Not much else to say. Thank you everyone for your kindness and time. For everyone who is hostile with me, I hope you find your own peace. Cheers. Am I the a-hole for cleaning out the fridge without telling my husband? Posted by AITA Fridge Out 4563. My dear husband brought home a metal box that he checks on often during the day when it's in the fridge. When asked about it, he said it contained freshly picked olives his friend Jason got from his uncle's farm, and he wanted husband to keep it until he gets back from his business trip. I had no problem with him keeping it safe at the bottom of the fridge. Husband always asked me to be cautious with the box and not open it, as it would be rude to touch other people's stuff. Yesterday, I decided to clean out the fridge, which took me about 2 hours from unplugging the fridge, emptying all the items, groceries, vegetables, and containers, and washing and cleaning out the inside of it, and then letting it settle before plugging it in again. I took the box my husband brought out of the fridge and placed it on the kitchen island alongside other containers. While I was working, I received a video call via WhatsApp from my husband while at work, feeling bored, and he was asking what I was doing. I showed him that I was cleaning out the fridge, and suddenly he freaked out and asked about the metal box. I was confused, so I told him to calm down, and I showed him where the box was. He got mad, telling me I shouldn't have cleaned out the fridge nor even touched the box without telling him. I again tried to ask him to calm down, as I saw no big deal with that. His precious box was safe and sound, but he went on a rant about how the box needed to be put back inside the fridge ASAP and told me to plug the fridge in right then, but I couldn't because it was still wet and I hadn't finished cleaning the other parts. Apparently, I peed him off by stalling and he hung up, and around 30 minutes later, he came home and pitched a hissy fit saying I should have picked a time when he was home to clean out the fridge so he could take the box somewhere else to keep it cool. I said, so what, it was sitting out of the fridge for barely 2 hours, and olives can stand being outside the fridge for a longer period. He said, I don't get it, and he took the box and wanted to leave with it. I asked where he was taking it, and he said he needed to go back to work and had no time to explain. I shrugged this whole thing off, but he came back with it in the evening and put it inside the fridge and then complained about me cleaning the fridge without telling him and acting dismissive of his opinions. I argued, what opinions could he have on cleaning out the fridge? He argued back, saying he promised Jason he'd keep his olives in good condition and that I should have just told him. End of story. I wonder if I messed up. He usually doesn't get that mad unless I've messed up, and I think I have. So first of all, yes, I'm aware that he is acting overprotective of the box, but he always acts like that whenever someone asks him to keep an item safe, like furniture or car parts. And second of all, no, I haven't seen those olives myself, and I haven't really opened the box because I didn't think I'd even have to. But husband tends to get overprotective of his friend's belongings, so I didn't give it much thought. Because, you may have been wondering, yes, I did unplug the fridge before cleaning it out since I did heavy cleaning. You can see it's a common method. Just Google it. If you're curious, I do it all the time. And to give some more info, the metal box does look like a container of some sort, but husband calls it box, so I didn't think it's much different. Am I the a-hole for not leaving some of my gaming consoles behind when I moved out? Posted by Wimpsim. I'm an 18-year-old male, and I moved out of my parents' house 6 weeks ago. We had a bad relationship for the last 3 years, and I couldn't handle living there. So I decided to stay with my best friend's parents. My relationship with my parents started to suffer when I was 12, and they became foster parents. Life changed pretty hard. They started taking in kids with all kinds of complex needs, and it led to them taking a sibling set when I was 13, and I had to give up my bedroom and move into my dad's old office, which was a box, so the boys and the girls could have rooms big enough to share. We then moved to a bigger house so they could foster more kids, but I still ended up in my box room. Then we fought about me having a job and not treating my step-siblings now that I had money of my own. From there, we pretty much fought about everything. They told me I was selfish and ungrateful, and I had so much that the least I could do was try to be a good big brother and embrace the fact they wanted to help kids. I just resented ending up in a box room and being expected to spend money on these kids. It felt like being shoved into a tiny room should have been enough sacrifice, but no. What really peed them off was how little I wanted to take part in the day-to-day stuff like therapies, doctor's appointments, taking them to and from school, and so on. Once my parents moved into the bigger house, money was super tight. They're still struggling with that now. When I moved out, I took my video game consoles, ones I paid for. There's my PS1, PS2, PS5, Switch, and a GameCube. My parents were ticked. They asked me to leave some of the stuff there for their foster kids, and I said no, that I had bought them and I wanted to keep them. They called me selfish again and said the kids deserve more of these happy things with all the hard lives that they've had. I told them they should buy them for them then, but I'm keeping my property. They called me an a-hole and told me they were ashamed of my attitude. Am I the a-hole? hey, you bought them, you're not under an obligation, it's nice to share, but you know what, given the situation, I think you're fine, you're totally not the a-hole. Nope. HOA takedown. HOA destroys my property, but I'm not even part of the HOA. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss this crazy fallout, and I'll see you there.